All right, we're back talking NFL on the Our Football Network with Thanksgiving in the rear view. The NFL playoffs are not that long off, so this is really the time of year, Ryan, where certain fan bases, like the Jets and the Giants, are thinking about the draft already. And hey, let me take a look at these college football games and these bowl games and see what kind of players that we're going to be able to draft next April. And then you're going to have 80%, 75% of the other fan bases that still believe that they have a shot, and they really do, based on the extra team, the extra week. There's just a ton of bad teams right now in the NFL that still have a shot to make the postseason.
The NFC has 8 teams within one game of the final playoff spot. One of these 8 teams will make the playoffs, and yet 8 fan bases all feel like, oh, well, it should be us.
Yeah.
Like, we're the best of the 8 bad teams. If we won this game or that game, it would be us.
Yes.
So why not us? So in a way, it's delusional, and in a way, it's exciting.
Yes.
And I think you're kind waiting till after Thanksgiving to say that's when Jets and Giants fans start thinking about the draft. I think that was before Halloween, not after Thanksgiving.
Well, that's because the college football season is really kind of over. The regular season ends, and that's when you kind of look back and go, hey, all right, so who are these guys that we can start to, because I was looking at the draft. So I said, okay, I'm going to start getting into this because I have to start putting these prospect reports together real soon for our lads. And so what I like to do is just take a look around and see where everybody feels certain players, and especially the quarterbacks. But and last week there was a site that had like Aiden Hutchinson as like the 7th pick, and I'm like, if you still think he's the 7th pick after watching the game on Saturday against Ohio State with Detroit as the first pick of the draft, I mean, come on. And knowing Matt Campbell and what they're trying to do there, Aiden Hutchinson is ticketed for Detroit. There ain't no doubt about that. But that's the fun part about it. That's why I'm just so sick of being used to it, because that's all I do is at this time of the year is talk about the draft when you're a Jet fan. But hopefully they've got the right regime in place. As far as the Giants, it looks like they're going to a different regime. Is that now all but official? Because I heard the Dave Gettleman rumors the last week or two. We've talked a lot about that, even in the beginning of the season. So who's going to be running this team as far as the draft is concerned?
It won't be Dave Gettleman. It won't be Dave Gettleman. Yeah, I saw the report from NFL Network. Well, that's nothing I haven't told you for months on this show, is that he will not be back next year. I also told you they'll try to make it a retirement instead of a firing. It's probably what they'll try to do.
Yeah.
The Giants go in one direction or the other here. They're going, unless it's a complete meltdown, which I don't think it's going to be. When you look at the schedule, I think they'll probably win 2 or 3 more games. So they're going to keep Joe Judge, and then they have to make a decision. And this is really the only thing that matters for the Giants franchise right now, is the next GM somebody who Joe Judge has input into. He interviews him, he hires him, he has connections to him. Is it a Joe Judge guy, which essentially gives Joe Judge more power in the organization? And you're saying Joe Judge isn't here for just one more year, regardless of what he does in 2022. He's our long-term coach because he's, bringing in the general manager. So do you go in that direction, or do you go with a totally outside hire, somebody who has no contact with Joe Judge, and then say to that guy, look, you can pick your coach. We'd like you to keep Joe Judge, evaluate him for a year because we really like him as owners. But ultimately, it's your team, your decision, Mr. Top GM candidate from Kansas City or Tennessee or, wherever. He's LA, and you pick your coach. So we'd like you to evaluate Judge. If you don't want to do that, then we'll move on from him. But the Maras do not want to be the owners who fire 3 coaches in a row after 2 years each. They do not want to be seen as those impatient owners. So they really want to keep Joe Judge. So they have to decide, is the next GM tied to Joe Judge? And in that case, you're basically extending Joe Judge, or is the next GM totally outside and you ask him to keep Joe for a year? Maybe you give the next GM a 5-year contract instead of a 4-year contract. and you say basically the extra year is a trial year at the beginning where it's year zero for you because you're using our coach. And if next year you decide you can't work with Joe Judge, then you pull the plug and you hire your guy. But otherwise, you see if you can work with our guy. I think those are the two directions they could go. And then there's the third direction, which scares the bejesus out of Giants fans, of just hiring somebody from within, whether that's Kevin Abrams, Chris Pettit, promoting somebody from within, which is really the Giants' way of doing things. That's what they like to do, is to promote from within. And that's what scares the bejesus out of fans after this last decade, to just kind of keep the different person, but same vision, no fresh ideas. That scares everybody.
Is there someone out there right now that either has ties to the Giant organization, that
Yeah,
is a logical?
The guy is Monti Ossenfort, the Titans scouting director.
Okay.
He has ties to excuse me, he has ties to Joe Judge. They work together in New England. They're close. I'm not breaking any news. I mean, I think Albert Breer from SI was the first one to connect the two of them. And as you ask around about them, yes, they had a good relationship, those two specifically in New England. He's a guy, he interviewed for the Panthers GM job, so he's ready to take that next step. It's not a forced hire. Other teams were interested in him. So he's the guy, really. If they go in that direction where Joe ends up with more power and more influence, then that's the guy to keep an eye on.
Okay. And overall, as far as the team, get back to the team too. Daniel Jones, the news there, will he or won't he play this week? Still up in the air?
It's a good question. Yeah, I'd say it's up in the air. I was told it's in serious jeopardy for this week, and he's week to week. So that makes it sound like no, that he won't play this week. But I'm not at practice today. Reading the other reporters, including my colleague Paul Schwartz at the Post, Daniel was out there for practice, moving around, jogging. Looked like he was going to be maybe limited. So, and then listening to Daniel Jones, he's saying, he's preparing to play. Is that gamesmanship and a facade? Probably. If you put, if you made me choose right now, I'd say he's probably more likely not to play than he is to play, but it's certainly not a season-ending kind of deal.
And I don't know, when did the Giants replace their coordinator again? How long ago was that?
It was after we skipped last week.
Okay, so we haven't spoken since then either.
Correct.
Okay.
We skipped last week because I was so busy.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, that was Thanksgiving week. Yeah.
In the whirlwind of the firing, they fired him 2 days before Thanksgiving, essentially.
Okay.
In the whirlwind of that plus the holiday, we haven't spoken. So yeah, the Giants fired Jason Garrett, replaced him with a collaborative effort, which is what everybody wants you to know, even though it's Freddie Kitchens actually calling the plays into Daniel Jones's ear. Offense looked exactly the same, totally inept in the red zone, a couple of hokey trick plays. But really, it can't run the ball, can't block. The one noticeable change, I guess, would be that a higher percentage of the targets went to the quote unquote best playmakers on the team. Saquon got more touches, Galladay got more touches, but they were still throwing 3rd and 7s to Pharaoh Cooper and stuff. So it really didn't look any different. And really, I don't know how it could. You have the same personnel. Yeah. So I don't think Jason Garrett was doing a good job, but I do think that firing him was like throwing meat to an angry fan base more than it was like, this is the solution to all our problems.
And what was the relationship there between Joe Judge and Garrett?
I mean, they didn't really have one. I mean, it was a working relationship, but they weren't like friends or anything. I mean, Jason Garrett played for the Giants. He's friendly with the Maras. They were, obviously as his coach of the Cowboys, they stayed in touch across enemy lines, deep mutual respect. So when he got fired by the Cowboys, Maris and Joe Judge wanted to hire Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator, and the Bills said, no, we're not allowing Brian Daboll to interview with you. Then Maris suggested Garrett to Judge. They interviewed. They apparently hit it off. Joe Judge said he makes all the staff calls, so it was his decision to hire Jason Garrett. But, look, there were only two guys on the entire Joe Judge's first staff, really, who had never worked with or who weren't already in place at the Giants. Two guys who weren't there and weren't his friends. Two guys he brought in from the outside, and they were Mark Colombo and Jason Garrett, and they're both fired.
That's good, actually. It's good that that's gone. So it should never have been in that place to begin with, but that's what franchises do when they're losing and making bad decisions, and it starts at the top. And these are the decisions that are made, and it trickles down. So,
correct. I mean, there's a reason the Giants have retired John Mara's. The Giants have retired Eli Manning's number this year, and they've retired Michael Strahan's number. And both times, John Mara's name came up, and both times the fans booed him because they believe it starts at the top.
Yep. The Jets, meanwhile, will take on the team that the Giants beat last week, the Eagles. And isn't it just like the NFL, and isn't it just like the NFC East, that the Eagles have these 3 great games in a row, and then they go to New York to play the woeful Giants, and they lay a complete egg. And it's like...
I mean, yeah, I think you nailed it. I think that's the state of the NFL this year, Greg. I don't think there is. I've said this a lot of times. I don't think I've said this on this show, but I've said this in conversations I've been having with people. It just feels like the kind of year where you're going to look back in 2027 and say, hey, who was in that Super Bowl in 2021? Like, and then you look back and you're like, oh, it was a Cardinals Titans Super Bowl. Like the way you look back and say, wait a minute, the Steelers beat the Cardinals in a Super Bowl, or the Ravens beat the 49ers in a Super Bowl, like just like one of those one-off Super Bowls that you're just like the Colts beat the Bears in the Bears made a Super Bowl this century. Yeah. Like it's just one of those years where it feels like none of the dynasty teams are going to get there. And you're going to have these one-off teams, and you're going to look back and you're going to say, I can't believe that was a Super Bowl. I don't remember the Bengals-Cowboys Super Bowl at all.
Yeah, right. Well, we know college football is heading that way. So, with all the big...
college football is headed that way for the semifinals, and then you're going to get a Georgia versus Michigan final that probably. It makes total sense.
Probably. Yeah. I hope so, as a Michigan fan. All right. So as far as the Jets are concerned, you look up and all of a sudden you do have to be reminded after every couple of weeks that Seattle is still this bad. And because of that, the Jets own 2 of the top 5 picks in the NFL draft if it ended today. That is not what they thought.
The Jets are 4-5 and the Giants are 6-7.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are 8-9.
Wow. 3 teams owning 6 picks in the top 10.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So there'd be a lot of things going on there.
3 teams right down the turnpike too.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and one of those teams, am I assuming just one of those teams is looking for a quarterback?
The Eagles are looking for a quarterback.
We know the Eagles are looking. Yes.
The Eagles.
The Giants are going to be all in on Daniel Jones next year.
No, I can't say that. No, okay. I can't say they'll be all in on Daniel Jones. No, I think it certainly depends who the general manager is and how much influence he has in the organization to make radical changes. But no, they have to make a 5th-year option decision on Daniel Jones in May.
Uh-oh.
They'll obviously have unofficially made that decision based on what they do in April for the draft. But no, with this specific quarterback class, I don't expect the Giants to start over and draft a quarterback. I think they go one of 2 ways. If the new general manager is a, bold, Les Snead type, maybe they make a run at Russell Wilson. They have to clear some cap space. I think that makes total sense for the Giants where they are. It makes total sense for Russell Wilson. Going to be hard to fit that contract. It's going to take some fine math to get that contract to work for the Giants, but I think that's certainly a possibility. And if not, then I think the other possibility is what we saw like with the Broncos this year, where it's Drew Lock, but we're going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater and have a competition. I think that's probably the most likely scenario of what the Giants do, which is some Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton type to challenge Daniel Jones next year,
The thing though is,
especially if Joe Judge is still the head coach.
because what you do have to, because the decision is, okay, even if you think that a lot of it obviously is going to be, okay, if we stick where we're in the top 10 and we could pick two really good football players, and maybe Daniel Jones can still be our guy, then that's one way to look at it. Another way is someone else, like you said, comes in, not really enamored with Daniel Jones. Maybe what I'll do is I'll use up one of those picks early on a premium player. I'll trade back one of my picks to get a couple of other picks, and one of those picks will be a quarterback. Where later in the first round, something like that.
I don't see that in any chance. No, I don't. It's a thing that teams do. I don't see that in any chance for the Giants. The Giants,
Daniel Jones will get a real shot as a young guy to win this job over a veteran,
unless they bring in a Rodgers or a Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. But I don't see any way where the Giants, after, because that would mean Daniel Jones was a flop. I don't see any chance where they go back to picking a young quarterback with a head coach who is in his do or die year. They're going to start over with a Matt Corral or somebody who is a project quarterback from this class. No, it'd be different if Trevor Lawrence was sitting there or something like that. But to take a flyer on a guy and commit another 4 years or 3 years to a flyer quarterback like Desmond Ridder doesn't make a whole lot of sense for where the Giants
you don't have to
are.
put his name in the list.
You don't want Saquon Barkley and Kenny Golladay and all these guys having to start over with a rookie quarterback. It doesn't make sense for the rest of the roster.
Now the Jets, they don't have to worry about that because that's their quarterback. They've put that together. Now they just got to hope it works out. But they're going to have now 2 picks in the top 5 or 10 as well. And one of those picks is more than likely, maybe both picks could end up on defense, the way the defense has played this year. I know a lot of draft nicks are going to put the Jets with like one of the offensive linemen. You know that because of Joe Douglas. And I don't mind that either because, hey, if you could still build a really good offensive line and bring in another offensive tackle, more power to you. So I could see that as well. But it just shows you that's why as a Jet fan, you have to be a little bit more patient because there have been key injuries this year. You have a rookie coach, you have a rookie quarterback. This has never been about 2021. It's been about the future. It's been about adding more of these picks that they did last year. It's about, can we get into the postseason no later than 2023? Now, if we can make it in 2022, we're stealing probably a little bit as long as we're in contention and Zach Wilson has shown that he's our man. That's all good. But this is all about still building and putting their foundation into. I don't expect Joe Douglas to trade back a lot in this draft. He's got a ton of young players already. He now needs premium talent young players. So I expect this is to be the type of draft that he's going to pretty much stay put.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep.
All right, and as far as the Jets, like I said, they take on the Eagles. They're a 7-point dog.
Never beaten the Eagles.
Oh, okay.
Never.
Oh, and what?
0-11. 0-11 all time.
0-11 against the Eagles. Okay, interesting. And the Giants, meanwhile, in Miami to take on the resurgent Miami Dolphins. Shame on anybody who thought Brian Flores was on his way out. They don't know anything. Miami Dolphins roster, just look at it, okay? It's not very good. Brian Flores is a very good coach. He's done a great job with not a lot. And nobody still even knows if the Miami Dolphins, I don't even know if they know whether or not Tua is going to be their quarterback of the future. And then there's this Deshaun Watson
they're in a very similar spot to the Giants, which is why it's such an interesting game.
Yep. So that's what's going on as far as the Jets and the Giants. As far as the rest of the NFL, wasn't it interesting as far as Thanksgiving because they received record ratings, which I don't know if that was surprising or not. I guess it was.
The two afternoon games both ended on the last play. Both were decided on the last play of the game. You can't really ask for that. I was trying to think of the last time that happened.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
That's true. And how about the fact that the home teams are 0-9 in the last 9 Thanksgiving days? That's 3 years. It's been 4 years since a home team has won on Thanksgiving.
That's a great stat.
Is that weird?
I didn't know.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
The
Well,
Raiders.
the Lions stink, so that's what's up with
Well,
that.
that's true.
But
That's part of it.
yeah.
Raiders Cowboys was the first NFL game in 18 years in which both teams were assessed 14 or more penalties for 100 or more yards.
Wow.
That's why I was surprised that the ratings. I was watching that. Oh my goodness.
There's nothing else to watch
Yeah.
when you're sitting on the couch full at 5:30.
And you do have two winning teams, two teams that are trying to make some noise as far as the postseason is concerned. That definitely helped. And the Cowboys are always, when they're good, they're a ratings kind of team. So, meanwhile, the playoff picture just keeps getting crazier and crazier. And sticking in the NFC East, are the Dallas Cowboys still going to win this division? Is it still over?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, who's coming to get them? Washington?
I don't know. I mean, the Cowboys haven't exactly played well lately.
I'll tell you, I watched that. I know the Eagles won whatever they won, 3 in a row, 2 out of 3, whatever it was. Yeah. That team that I saw last Sunday, and my Eagles writers friends told me that, that was the exception. They haven't been that bad. You saw them on their worst day. That team was horrendous. If you remember, we had on Jeff Mosher, my buddy, and Elliot Shore-Parks, my buddy, and I argued with them in the offseason. I said, this team looks horrendous. And they said, no, we have a great offensive line, a great defensive line. You can't be that bad. I said, okay, I think they're bottom 5 in the NFL. And then I was wrong. They weren't bottom 5 in the NFL, right? The team I saw play Sunday was the worst team I've seen play in 2 years, and that includes the Giants. I mean, that team was awful. So chalk it up, I guess, to just a bad day. But Jalen Hurts was not a good quarterback, just like I didn't think he was a good quarterback. Nick Sirianni got outcoached, just like I thought he would get outcoached. So they're not coming. The Giants have an easy schedule, but it's a lot to ask for them to make any kind of run. They very rarely even put back-to-back wins together, let alone more than that. Especially now that Jones, you don't know if he's going to play this week. Every game he misses, whether it's 1, 2, is a lot.
Yeah.
And then Washington, I guess Washington's the second best team in the division right now.
Yeah.
They've been hot. They seem to have found something, but I still think Dallas, push comes to shove, is much better. It's 2 games better than everybody else in this division.
Well, I'm pretty sure you picked Washington in the beginning of the season. Preseason. So
I don't know if I picked them or I picked Dallas. I can't remember, but I certainly thought, I know that I said on this show that they were 1 and 2, and then there was a sizable gap between the Giants and 3 and 4.
So the fact that Washington is starting to catch up, and let's recall the whole issue early on was the defense. We expected Washington's defense to be much better.
And they're somehow better without Chase Young, which I don't
understand. What's really helping is the fact that Taylor Heineke is now playing better, and he had a rough patch for a few games. And it's the NFL. Your quarterback doesn't play well. That's what happens. And back to the Giants.
They found a running game too, which is important.
Yeah, which is unusual.
Washington has found a running game.
Yeah.
It seems like this year the running game matters more than we always talk passing league. Seems like this year the teams that have steadied themselves are the teams that have found their running game.
And you know what? I think that's going to continue. I think the days of everybody has to throw the football. All right, you're still going to have that, but there are smart coaches out there that understand, hey, you know what? If I could run the football effectively and 75% of the teams in the league don't, well, that's an edge for me because they're not prepared to face a team that knows how to run the football and will practice running the football every week. And you're seeing the same thing in college. That's why Michigan's having such a good season. But taking a look at the Giants, man, if I had season tickets to the Giants home games this year, I think I'd want to, I don't know. I mean, it'd be hard to get me off the couch. And the games that they have played at home this year, is it the stadium? Is it the dreariness? Is it the Giants defense and inept offense? What is it that when you get these Giant home games, with the exception of the Rams, they were so good at the time and their offense was awesome, it just seems like these ugly, I don't even want to watch. And even the Eagles, Hurts probably puts his 2 best games back to back in his career, and then he comes in to play the Giants and he looks like the guy that we thought he was. And
I will say I thought the Giants' atmosphere this Sunday was as good as I've seen it in probably 2 years. You know, it's been half empty stadiums and a lot of overrun by visiting teams and a lot of first quarter booing and stuff. And it's been dreary for a while. But this last Sunday, I guess it was probably the Strahan retirement ceremony, and they gave out white towels that were waving and the hatred of the Eagles.
Yeah.
They had a good atmosphere this week. I was very surprised, but I expected it. I expected booing Strahan from Eagles fans who had bought tickets on the secondary market, and that's not what I saw. I thought the Giants fans actually gave the team a good boost there Sunday. I don't know if that'll continue. They play 2 more road games before they're home, and I guess how they do in those games will tell you what the crowd is like for when Dallas comes, if it's going to be Giants fans or it's going to be a Cowboys home game.
Okay, sticking in the NFC now. So Packers get a big win over the Rams, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, with the Rams defense. They are just not. They're not the same. And even though they got the 3 stars now, it's incredible. And maybe it's not. This just shows you. I love it when you could be proven, when coaches can prove how good they are and how useful they are. When you take Brandon Staley out of the Rams and put him somewhere else, and then you leave the Rams with whoever is coaching that defense now, it's like night and day. It's like that is not a good defense anymore. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So and all of a sudden, Stafford has to outscore the opponent. It's almost like here I'm in Detroit again. I don't have that defense that I had early on in the season. And so that's not going well. And then, OBJ is there, and then Woods is. It's just all of a sudden the Rams in a few weeks look like a team that is just going to maybe be 1 and out if they play the wrong team on the road.
Correct. Yep, that's exactly what they look like. Yep.
So we'll
very, very disappointing. There's in the division with no room for error. They're now 2 games behind the Cardinals. So and here come the 49ers.
Yes.
And the 49ers always beat the Rams. So very interesting. I mean, could the Rams finish 3rd in that division and fall all the way to the 7th seed or the 6th seed? It's certainly possible.
Big win for the Packers. That win, and I was surprised that they ended up as the dog in that game. I didn't understand that. I don't know where the disrespect for the Packers have gone just because they lost 1 football game with Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota, especially when you're taking a look at the fact that it's their defense that seems to be stepping up, and they still don't have Zadarius Smith back. So if they get him back, then I just look at this NFC and I'm saying it's Aaron Rodgers, and if they can put a defense on the field at the same time, that's probably my favorite to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it depends on the Cardinals. It depends if Hopkins is healthy. It depends if Kyler Murray is healthy. It depends, on really those 2 guys. But no, I mean, look, I would agree that I think I picked the Packers to go to the Super Bowl last year. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl this year. The Cardinals are a team I didn't see coming, but I've watched them a little bit, and they impressed me. It's not smoke and mirrors. That's a good team.
Yeah, and look, it was such a great game the first time, which is when Kyler got hurt. Maybe we'll see a Green Bay, Arizona NFC West championship. And by the way, as far as that division is concerned, I'm going to ask you this question, okay? Do you think Detroit will upset Minnesota this week and seal Mike Zimmer's fate in Minnesota?
That is a very Minnesota thing to do, to lose that game. They just lose head scratchers. They lose games they shouldn't lose. They win games they shouldn't win. Looking at Detroit's schedule, I'm not ready to say they're going to go winless, but when you look at their schedule, they have Atlanta at Atlanta,
which is good because Atlanta can't win at home.
What's the spread on the Lions Vikings? What do people think it is?
7.5.
Yeah, you know what? I think I would pick the Lions this week.
I don't think they're a bad upset play. They've covered, I think, 4 straight games. Outright upset, maybe this is one of those upsets. This could happen.
Yeah, I could see. This is what the Vikings do. They lose head scratchers. So, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. They beat the Packers, then they lose to the Lions. That's very Vikings.
And actually, that was, remember that last game that these two teams played that was crazy down at the end of the game, went back and forth late. That was the game that was won 1917. It looked like Detroit had stolen the game, and then Minnesota went down the field in like 3 plays and kicked like a 55-yard field goal to win the game at the buzzer. So that was a close game. So, but knowing Minnesota, they'll win the game 44-3. So, but no Dalvin Cook for a couple of weeks, which is why I even mentioned that, because Dalvin Cook's out. They just lost. Is this it?
So many of the top running backs are injured right now. It's crazy. Kamara, Cook, McCaffrey.
It's just, what is going on? Yeah, not good. That's definitely going to make my yearly fantasy football selections a little bit more interesting now. Maybe taking running backs isn't such a guaranteed pick anymore early on. Also in the NFC, you mentioned we know what's going on in the South, but in the West, San Francisco, yes. How for real are you bought in by San Francisco? And because at this point, they're the 6th seed. So they went from being out of the playoffs to being the 6th seed. And now we're taking a look at teams like Minnesota. I mean, I'm not even going to go through the list because there's like 8 of them in the NFC that are vying for that 7th seed.
Yeah, I would tell you how bought am I on them? I don't think they can win the Super Bowl, but I think of that 8-team logjam, they're the best team. So
true. Yes.
So if you and when you include them, then you're talking about 2 spots, not just 1 playoff spot. So yeah, I think they're a play. I think they're headed to the playoffs.
And they take on Seattle this week. It's just crazy what's going on there with Russell Wilson. You mentioned him before with the Giants. Pete Carroll, the biggest mistake Pete Carroll made, and I know Jet fans are probably going to think this is a weird thing to say, but letting Brian Schottenheimer go was a dumb decision. Seattle was headed somewhere last year. Finally, he was there for a few years. They had something going. Things slipped a little bit in the second half, and Pete Carroll, he went nuts. I think
that team doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's their problem. Do we want to be an up-tempo offense? Do we want to be a ground and pound offense? Do we want to let Russ cook? Do we want to throw deep? Do we want to? They don't know what they want to be. When you watch them, it's like a mishmash conglomerate of talent. It's like the offensive line is obviously not good enough. It reminds me a little bit of the Giants circa 2017, where they thought they were going to be good and they're just awful.
And how do they feel now? They have no first-round draft pick. Could have been a top 5, top 10 draft pick, but they have Jamal Adams. Yep. So, yeah, they should be happy there. In the AFC, you have the huge game. The last game of the week is the biggest game of the week. It will potentially decide the AFC East. Because I think if New England wins, I think it's over. Based on New England's schedule.
They play twice.
Well, based on New England's schedule, though, I think it would be over because New England has 2 games that are very winnable at the end of the season. And if they go up 2 games, even if they get the one back, I still think it's going to be kind of hard because of all the tiebreakers that go into it in the AFC and so forth in the AFC East. But anyway, if Buffalo wins, is completely different. But I don't know what to expect in this game. I have no idea. This is one of those games where I wouldn't be surprised if I saw anything. I have no idea how this game is going to go.
Correct. I think the Bills will get up for it because I think the Bills are a team that gets up for good teams and falls asleep for bad teams.
Yes, good point.
That's a dangerous thing to be in the regular season, and it's an okay thing to be in the playoffs. And I think the Bills will treat this like a playoff game, and I think they'll win the game.
They better.
They're the better team. Everybody knows they've underachieved. They're tired of hearing all week. They're going to hear about how the Patriots are back. The Patriots are back. Their window closed already, and I think they're going to come out and they're going to play an A caliber game.
And I'm looking at it as, I don't know. I think I'm looking at this game as probably like their first matchup last year, which was a low-scoring, close football game. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this. I'm going to be intrigued about how this is, because Josh Allen is going to have to be patient in this football game. Because Belichick is going to play zone in this game. He is not going to allow Josh Allen to beat him deep in any way, shape, or form. He can't match up with the receivers because he doesn't have the DBs anymore. So they're going to play zone in this contest. So will Josh Allen be patient? And will Buffalo try running the football even just a little bit? Because I don't know what the stats are, but I think they must run the ball less than any team in the NFL. Do you know any team in the NFL that runs the ball or at least attempts like they care so little about the running game than the Buffalo Bills?
I don't know. I'll look it up right now. I'll look up teams with the fewest rushing attempts right now.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I can't think any. I would have said the Eagles before 3 weeks ago when they started all of a sudden running the ball like crazy, and now they're second in the league in rushing attempts, which is mind blowing. I would have said them 3 weeks ago. Now they're like a run first machine.
And which you have to take advantage.
Fewest,
keeping in mind, Josh Allen though runs the ball a lot for Buffalo.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're nowhere near the bottom in fewest rushing attempts, but there's two reasons for that. One, like you said, Josh Allen runs the ball a lot, and two, they are, compared to most of the teams, they're a pretty good team, so they have to, at least at the end of games, run out the clock a little bit, and they get more plays on offense.
Yeah, they've had a lot of blowouts this year. Yeah,
this isn't rushing percentage. This is rushing attempts. They get more plays on offense. So the fewest rushing attempts in the league are Seattle, the Jets, and the Bucks. The Bucks is a little surprising, but I get it. They're with Gronk and Godwin and Brown and Evans and Brady. You throw the ball more than you run it. And the Seahawks and Jets are bad teams who don't run a lot of plays. So,
yeah. Either way, they just don't care about running the football. That's just the bottom line. Yeah. And I don't know if that's going to work out in the end run, but we'll find out. Also, in the AFC, that North is still it goes every 2 weeks. It's who the heck is, and every week the Baltimore Ravens find the weirdest ways to win football games. Oh, we throw 4 interceptions. We win. That's just, that's how we win.
I've told you, winning teams win.
But the Bengals have righted their ship after that 2-game situation, especially that Brown loss. Really, you had is that going to affect them? No, it didn't, and they're back. So it looks like, especially with the fact that the Bengals have to host the Ravens at some point before the end of the season, it's going to be those two teams. You think that's first and second right now? Because the Steelers starting to slide a little bit, especially with Watt not being on the field as much.
Watt's not healthy. The schedule's really hard. I can't sleep on the Browns, but yes, I think it's probably Bengals, Ravens, but I'm not going to sleep on the Browns just yet. I'm going to be stubborn on the Browns.
I know, but we're getting to the point each week as we go further and further into the season that it doesn't look like Baker's getting any healthier or any better. Hunt is still not where he needs to be.
Correct. Yeah.
Because they need a healthy Hunt and a healthy Chubb, and they got to run those guys all day long.
Correct. And they lost Jack Conklin, which is a big piece off their offensive line.
Yeah. So that the defense did a great job, and that's not good enough. Meanwhile, will the Tennessee Titans hold on? Yes, because they have a 3-game lead in the AFC South. Yes. They can't even blow it this much because their schedule isn't that bad. They have a pretty easy schedule to at least even as they're probably going to get A.J. Brown and Julio Jones back in a couple of weeks. But how many more games?
Their team is so injured.
Oh, it's incredible.
Their team is so injured. It's crazy. And they've lost so many head scratchers. Like, imagine being 7-0 against playoff teams from last year, but losing to the Jets and the Texans.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, they're going to win that division, but this injuries caused slide of theirs is going to cost them the 1 seed. So,
Colts, they have got to make sure that they take care of business against Houston this week after a very tough way to lose their first game in regulation, I believe, since September when they lost to Tampa Bay this week. So they want a really nice run. But they have to pick things back up because they were so far back. You can't now afford one of those bad losses if they have a chance to make. I still think they're going to find a way to get in. You think the Colts will be in the playoffs?
2 from the AFC East, 2 from the AFC North. Yes, I did. This is the first time I'm saying this. This is the first time I'm going to say this. I didn't have them in the preseason. I didn't have them in them when they were 1-4. I do think right now, if I had to put the teams in, I'd give them the 7 seed.
And if there's a second team in the AFC West, who do you feel right now today?
Chargers.
It's still the Chargers.
I stick with the Chargers.
It's still mind-boggling, that team. I mean, get blown out at Denver.
They're like the AFC's Vikings. They lose for a decade. They beat teams they shouldn't beat, lose to teams they shouldn't beat, and perennially underachieve.
Well, if they're going to make the playoffs, this is the week to do it because they're taking on a very good, hot team right now in Cincinnati. You know, I like the Bengals this week because they're better than the Chargers at this point as far as how, especially their confidence and how hot they are. They're more consistent than the Chargers, but we'll see. Chargers are a good football team.
Chargers have the Giants and the Texans, which should be 2 easy wins.
Yeah.
And then the Broncos, and they finish with the Broncos and Raiders. So they have a chance there to head with the 2 teams in the division to bury them and say we're the second best team.
Yeah. They can even lose this week and they'll be fine. Meanwhile, I'm going to run through these teams and tell me, besides Las Vegas, and we talked about the Giants already, besides Las Vegas, will Seattle, Minnesota, Chicago, Houston, or Jacksonville be looking for new head coaches in 2022?
Houston and Chicago for sure. But
okay.
I would definitely pencil them in. I think Cully was obviously a placeholder in Houston. Matt Nagy, it hasn't worked. He should have probably been let go last year. Those 2 for sure. Minnesota, I would say if they don't make the playoffs, they'll make a change. That's very much results-based, I would think. And then the other 2, Seattle and Jacksonville, I think are if the coach wants to leave. Like, I don't think they'll be fired. I think if the coach wants to leave, then they'll make a change. Pete Carroll, if he's had enough, he wants to retire, fine. Don't think he'll be fired. He's done too much. Jacksonville, huge contract for Urban Meyer. They aren't looking to fire him by any means. But if he wants the Notre Dame job, then I don't think they'll fight him to stay. I don't think they'll say, you can't go. We have to have you. Here's a raise. But if those will be coaching dictated moves, not team dictated moves, I think, in Seattle and Jacksonville.
And now with Lincoln Riley leaving one college team for another, so he didn't go to the NFL, so that's not happening. It looks like Matt Campbell is going to be the last guy standing again. And he just coached his most talented team this season, and they didn't even make it to the Big 12 championship game. I think that's it. I think it's over. He's got to move on. He's got to, while things are going good, he should realize I got to get out of here now, and I got to pick a spot because I think he's going to have a choice. Look, we still don't know who the coach at Notre Dame is. I think him going to Notre Dame is a really good fit, don't you?
Correct. I don't know that he's coming to the NFL. He could go to a different college job, but I do agree with you that it's his time to leave Iowa State.
Yeah, and then of course, there isn't anybody out there just like I could say Matt Campbell in college. Is there an assistant coach where you can just he'll be a head coach next year
for the NFL?
Yeah, I guess not.
Off the top of my head,
yeah.
Dayball could be a head coach next year from Buffalo. The offensive coordinator, Brian Dayball, could be a head coach next year. Bieniemy, we don't know. I mean, he's on his 400th interview. I mean, certainly possible he could be a head coach next year.
Not going to help him out with what's going on with Nagy.
Huh?
Not helping him. What's going on with Nagy in Chicago?
No. I'm trying to think if anybody else comes to mind as like.
I can't think.
Nobody else jumps to the forefront as this guy is definitely going to be a head coach next year.
And the Raiders, you never know with the Raiders. See, the Raiders would be the type of organization that if they somehow find a way to make the playoffs, they could probably give the head coaching job to this interim guy next year. That's how the Raiders are. They do silly things like that.
Byron Leftwich. I'll be surprised if he doesn't get a job.
That's a good one. Yes.
Young
We talked
guy,
about him last year. Yes.
obviously connects with players. Yeah, he's a guy I won't be surprised. He's a guy that if you said most likely assistant coach to get hired, I think it's probably him even ahead of Bieniemy.
And then lastly, before I let you go, Bill Belichick or Zach Taylor, as in my mind, these are the two clear, as of today, they are my NFL coaching candidates of the year. I don't think there's anybody close third. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong. There's not. I mean, you're not wrong that those two are two of the top, but you're wrong that it's not a top three. Cliff Kingsbury has to be in the top three.
Okay.
I think you want to draw a line in the sand after two. I'll draw a line in the sand, but it has to be after three. I think there's a demarcation there, but it's after three, not after two. Cliff Kingsbury has to be there. That's a franchise that never wins. They could be the number one seed in the NFC. They have the best record in the NFL. To me, he has to be. He went 2-1 without Kyler Murray. Like, to me, he has to be in the conversation. But if I had a vote, who would I vote for today? I would vote for Zach Taylor.
And isn't it interesting how a couple of years ago, Kingsbury.
Zach Taylor was supposed to be fired. Zach Taylor entered the season as the most likely coach to be fired.
That's true.
Kingsbury was not going to get fired. Belichick was not going to get fired.
Yeah, but Kingsbury was still a guy that is like, he doesn't even have a winning record in college. He can't even beat Oklahoma.
Correct, but he has some keys to that franchise that he wasn't going to get fired.
No, but there was a lot of people that were like just waiting for him to fail.
Correct. He's made some enemies along the way.
So it's good that it's nice to see. But look, that's why we say it all the time, man. I mean, he wouldn't be there if Colin Murray wasn't there. So it's like a match that just fit perfectly. And you made a good point that even when Murray went down, they were able, because again, very smart. The organization smart to have Colt McCoy as a number 2 quarterback in case somebody gets hurt like Murray. They can still go in and win a couple of games. Not enough NFL teams put a premium on who my backup quarterback is. And it turns out to bite them a lot of times. It did not, because Arizona was prepared. Okay, so that'll wrap it up. Next week, it's week 14 in the NFL, and then we'll be in the final month. When's the season end? In January this year?
Yeah, like the 7th. There's 2 weeks of January games.
Okay. And what are you doing? What are you covering? You got the Giants this week as usual. You're going to be covering. You going anywhere? I'm sure you'd like to go on a road trip this week.
I'd like to go to Miami, but no, I'm not going to Miami.
Yeah,
no.
That would have been nice. You could have went to Tampa and Miami, but that just didn't work out. All right, Ryan, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
See ya.